for anybody worth their salt, the success of Heated Rivalry should come as no surprise. It very clearly demonstrates a movement towards very strong trends. And anybody who is in a network executive position of a major Hollywood studio or in any entertainment field should be able to pick up these trends pretty easily. And what these trends are is that there's 5 of them, starting with the first one, a global fandom event. What is a global fandom event? It's when tens of millions of people form a community seemingly overnight, all around love for one thing. These people talk to each other, they create more content and art for the thing that they love, which ends up being free marketing. What's really happening is they're building community, and that's kind of the buzzword that social media marketers like to use all the time, that nothing matters unless you're able to build a community that cares about you. And that's exactly what Heated Rivalry has managed to do. They've literally created a community of millions of fans around the world who are passionate, who talk to each other, interact with each other, and care about the story and care about the characters. Other examples of global fandom events include 2012's Avengers. Loki was a breakout character, and despite Loki not being treated all that well by the franchise runners, especially in Ragnarok and in Infinity War, Loki still ended up being the breakout character in Phase 4. In fact, the Loki TV series is the only thing even Disney is thinking is worth keeping in Phase 4. Everything else got retconned for Doomsday. Other global fandom events include Captain Levi from Attack on Titan around 2013 and 2014, and Gojo Satoru from Jujutsu Kaisen in 2023 when the second season of Jujutsu Kaisen came out. Now, what all these characters have in common, and also what they have in commonality with Heated Rivalry, is that their stories are deeply intertwined with themes of loneliness, yearning, and finding belonging in a cruel world. Another common thread is that they have very strong and loyal female fan bases, and fangirls are the strongest type of fans you can get because they don't flake when things get hard, and they don't flake when the wind blows another way. Contrast that to a lot of YouTubers who have listeners who say that the reason why Hollywood isn't performing well is because their storylines are too woke. But those audience members also don't go to movie theaters normally. So there are 2 types of movie theater goers. There's the casual goers who will go to the movie theater if something is good, but they don't really have an opinion on anything and they don't really watch any review videos. And then there are the fangirls who will love a particular property and will go see a movie over and over and over again just because they love that particular story. The people who watch the YouTubers who talk about movies being too woke watch those YouTubers. They don't actually go to the theaters. So mathematically, it makes sense to appeal to fangirls because they're the ones with the money and they're the ones with the discipline to actually show up to the theater, create fan edits, fan art, fan fiction, which just ends up being free marketing for the property. In fact, there are many franchises like Star Trek and Gundam which may not have survived had it not been for female fans in the early days who supported the series before the series really hit the mainstream. So if you're smart, then you make sure that you have the fangirls in your fandom, because a fandom without fangirls is a flop fandom. Point number 2. What exactly is good acting? And what is the point of awards shows, like the Oscars and the Emmys? A lot of times people campaigning for Oscars and Emmys, it comes down to, 1, you have to act like you're very angry and then you have to yell a lot. But is that really good acting? Most non-actors can throw a tantrum pretty well. That doesn't take a lot of skill. Even Marlon Brando once scathingly said that people don't think you can act unless you yell. And that's coming from Marlon Brando. No, I think what makes a good actor isn't the things that they can do that non-actors like you and I can't easily do. For example, I legitimately thought that the actor who played Ilya Rozanov in Heated Rivalry was Russian, and if he wasn't Russian, then he was a native Russian speaker. So imagine my shock when I realized that Connor Story was born and raised in Texas, and not only that, he had learned Russian in 1 week, and not only that, he had delivered a 4-page monologue in Russian, completely understanding what the words meant, and delivered that monologue with gravitas. And when it was showed to a native Russian speakers, they said they felt the emotion and they actually couldn't tell that he wasn't a native Russian speaker. That is not something that a non-actor like you and I can do. And it shows that he's got tremendous potential as both a creative and an actor. I would also like to praise Hudson Williams' performance as Shane Hollander. Rachel Reed, the author of the Game Changer series, has noted that Shane is on the spectrum. And if you watch back on episode 1, you can see a lot of the small tells that are kind of endearing in Hudson's performance of Shane in episode 1. The hesitations, the awkwardness, these things are intentional. And then you can see that at the end of episode 1, where he confronts Ilya on the balcony of the after party, there is an evolution in the character's confidence, in the facial expressions, the posture, the gestures, the voice, and that is entirely intentional. And it's also worth pointing out that Hudson is actually nothing like the character of Shane. In fact, fandom has jokingly pointed out that Hudson is a lot more like Ilya, and Connor is actually more like Shane, which is a fun little detail. Point number 3. Context is everything. I think the love scenes in Heated Rivalry are appropriate for the type of story that's being told, in that story is about discovering your sexuality, falling in love, finding belonging, and doing so all in an environment where it's potentially career-ending to have that kind of relationship, or in Ilya's case, even potentially dangerous to have that kind of relationship. And I think it's appropriate given that this is a story about romance, that there's love scenes in it. It's like if you tried to film an action movie and then the action movie didn't have any fight scenes in it, how would you film an action movie? And I think that there is a double standard in that if it's a queer movie and there's something that has a love scene in it, then people are more likely to criticize it, but they will not criticize straight love scenes in series like Euphoria and Game of Thrones, when the latter two have absolutely nothing. The themes of the show have absolutely nothing to do with sexuality, yet the sexuality is put there for shock value and eye candy, and yet there's no criticism. So because the writers think they can get away with it, they don't actually think through why those scenes are there in the first place. Like, Heated Rivalry at its core is a Romeo and Juliet story. Of course there's going to be love scenes. Game of Thrones is a Hamlet and King Lear story. The thesis of Game of Thrones is that power corrupts and that the world is cruel. What does that have to do with sexuality? Why are there love scenes in here? And for Euphoria, I can't even tell you what the thesis of Euphoria is. It just seems to be a whole bunch of shock value items kind of thrown together in a hodgepodge. But if you're able to tell me what the thesis of Euphoria is in 5 words or less, please comment below. It would be much appreciated. Point number 4. The myth of the A-list actor and their imaginary following in the year 2025, soon to be 2026. Hollywood keeps casting the same 15-16 people in every single movie, and now audiences are confused because they just saw this actor in one movie, and now this actor is playing a different character in another movie, and they can't buy them as a new character because all they see is the actor in a wig. I don't understand the need to have young actors prove that they're even worth a shot by making them do hundreds of small roles before even giving them any sort of mainstream role or a break, while concentrating all of the mainstream roles to just 15-16 people or the children of Hollywood elites. Art is a sport. You want the best athletes on your team, not just because someone has connections, especially now when it's looking really bleak with Western entertainment having to compete in the same rink as Attack on Titan, Frieren, and Demon Slayer. Even someone like Joaquin Phoenix, his performance of Commodus in Gladiator when he was 24 or 25, it took so many takes for him to get that performance right. Ridley Scott at some point was filming without any more film in the camera, but he didn't give up on him. And if we didn't get that performance from Joaquin as Commodus, it would have been a great shame. And what it took was a director to really believe in young talent, even when no one else thought they were a sure thing. Prior to landing Heated Rivalry, both Connor Story and Hudson Williams were working on their own projects while attending auditions, and were both waiting tables in order to make ends meet so that they could continue to pursue their acting dreams. Connor did get a small break in around 2022 when he was cast in Joker 2 in a minor role, which he did a fantastic job in. But I was very disappointed and upset to learn that he wasn't even invited to the Joker 2 premiere, and that he wasn't even invited to the Venice Film Festival to see the movie that he was in, and that he had to fly himself out to Venice and crash in a friend's hotel room. That is just immensely disappointing in the Hollywood leadership to have done that, because not only is young talent being starved of opportunities, it's actually in Hollywood's interest to bring their best players to the forefront, especially now when they can barely compete with anime. And to treat your young talent like this is abhorrent. Point 5. Getting with the times. In our interest-based attention economy, the importance of A-listers is becoming like that of social media influencers, in that no one cares who you are anymore. They only care about what value you offer. So Hollywood studios thinking they can just hire an A-lister and suddenly an audience will arrive to the theater are severely behind the times. Algorithms do not care how many followers you have. They do not care how much clout you have. Clout means nothing. Only the strongest content will rise to the top of the algorithms. And guess who's been dominating searches, comments, saves, and shares on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube recently? It's heated rivalry. Cringe is now the new cool. We lived in the world in the last 10 years where the only acceptable emotions in Western movies was basically disgust, pride, and ambition. And the contrast is extremely stark when you compare it to anime like Frieren or One Piece, where there's joy, sadness, heartbreak, a lot of color, humor. Like if you had a choice between the two and the world is bleak because the economy isn't good, what are you gonna pick? The one that's like just sneering at you all the time, or the one that actually uplifts you and gives you something meaningful to watch while comforting you in these difficult times? Obviously anime. And that's what makes heated rivalry so refreshing in the context of Western entertainment, in that it doesn't cut off its important emotional moments with a random quip or a misplaced joke. It doesn't shy away from emotional vulnerability. It doesn't shy away from joy, sadness, and basically all the things that make people feel human. It doesn't feel like a soulless product that was only made for profit. Innovation happens when there is a lack of resources and a will to proceed anyway, which explains perfectly why Hollywood can have tens of billions of dollars at their disposal and still fail at storytelling, because they spend that money on A-list actor salaries, on unnecessary CGI and effects to distract from the fact that sometimes they walk into productions without even a finished script. They can't get the fundamentals of storytelling right, and they don't think that they actually need to sit down and do their homework, because they can just throw more money at the fluff and try to distract audiences from the fact that they can't do the equivalent of basic math in storytelling. Now contrast that to anime, where they had a lot less money to work with, so they couldn't animate as many frames. So ever since the 70s, 80s, Japanese anime has focused very heavily on storytelling quality over how pretty the frames look or how many frames they have, till now where they've basically mastered storytelling as a craft. And heated rivalry does much of the same. They literally had almost no budget. They barely had money to hire extras for the press release scenes, for the awards show scene, for the game scenes. Their shooting locations were pretty sparse. They didn't have very expensive sets, and yet they were able to pull off magic because they focused in on the beating heart of the story. They got the fundamentals of storytelling right. They got the emotional beats right. And that's what ended up mattering to the audience. The audience does not care if you spent $100 million to make a set look good. It doesn't even matter now, because now AI can make everything look good. No, what the audience cares about is what does the human bring into all of this. And that is a storytelling piece. And when you don't have resources to fluff your way out of this, then you focus on the core principles of storytelling, and that's where magic happens. And that's what separates art from content.